For a Verizon commercial. What? All right, here we is. Woo! Brenda, calm down. Here we is on September 8th in the final stretch of our quarter. Here in this class, we are gathering to discuss a scriptural view of lots of different topics. And Lord willing, Sunday, Mr. Musgrave will lead our study and discussion about a scriptural view of security and comfort. Tonight, we're going to talk about leisure and recreation. That's the British pronunciation. Here in the United States, we call it leisure and recreation. And I welcome your contributions. So, questions that I prepared, put on the back table, emailed out to provoke your thinking on the topic. Number one, is leisure, recreation, even a Bible topic? Should we even be talking about this in a Bible class? And I ask you to, if you care to answer, to support your answer with Scripture, naturally, because the title of the class is A Scriptural View of Whatever We're Talking about. So why don't we start there? Is leisure, recreation, even a Bible topic? I can imagine, I think I've known some people in my lifetime Christians, who would say, God doesn't care about that. What say you? You're with Paul? Okay, so, paraphrase. Exercise profits little, okay? So that would mean it's a Bible topic, but not of great emphasis? Okay. Other? Yes, sir. Okay. So if the first question is this topic of leisure recreation a Bible topic? I suppose if you find a book in the Bible, a significant portion of which describes a person who had a relationship with God who was of no small significance in God's plan, i.e. Solomon, and he writes about it in an inspired work, I think we found an answer, which is God caused some of his scripture to include discussion, observation, lessons that include leisure, recreation, how that fits into the life of a person who's trying to serve God. Did I make too much out of that, or is that a fair conclusion you would reach? Okay? Other thoughts? Yes, sir. I love where your mind goes, Benny Scott. Right here. Okay. Okay. Bingo. Okay. So I think before we go to the next slide, which my brother here, my brother's uh, perfectly teed up for a transition there. Here's where I would go. Whatever you do, do all in the name of the Lord. So raise your hand if you, in the last 30 days, have participated in anything that you would define as leisure recreation. Raise your hand. Anytime in the last 30 days you did something, okay. That's it. Rex is the only one who spent every, okay. He's focused. So God says that as servants of His, children of His, citizens in His kingdom, that we had better be living our lives in a way where we believe, we're persuaded, we're convinced that we have God's blessing, God's authority to do whatever it is we're doing. If we don't, we ought not to be doing it, right? So we ought to be able to find some kind of blessing, some kind of authorization, some kind of teaching, or just general principles that says this is a good activity that I'm involved in. I have God's blessing to be involved in that. So I think it is a Bible topic because anything that I'm involved in, anything that you're involved in, we need to have the authority of God. And we get that from the Scripture. So one way or another, pretty much any topic is a scriptural topic. I suppose calculus is not a scriptural topic. I think we could probably find a few topics where it's like, okay, really, I don't know if it's a Bible topic. But leisure and recreation certainly are, for the reasons that have already been noted. What are we talking about, leisure and recreation? Well, this is life, okay? Human life. What does human life consist of? There's death and taxes. There's a lot of ways you can slice and dice life. One way you could do it is work and the absence of work. Work and non-work. Work and rest. Fair enough? Now, does the Bible say things about work and rest? Yes, lots of things about work and rest. Being a little more, breaking it out a little more, in the rest category, see if you agree with me, I think we would put sleep in the rest category. But is it in the work category? There might be some people that could say, hey, I'm sleeping while I'm working. If you're getting paid to do a sleep study, Alan, I'm sleeping and I'm working, right? Some people could be sitters, right? Sitters, like they go and and they don't need to be like beat guys right on the person every minute. Sometimes they can be sleeping and they're working. Okay, they're available to be becked and called, right? Play. Generally, not only children play, adults, people of all ages play. Do we consider that rest? It may not be idle. It may not be at lack of motion, but it's not work. So it's in the category of rest, I think. Exercise, that might be very strenuous. A lot of calories might be burned. So that might be in the work category for some people, professional athletes. That'd be in that category, trainers. But it also could be in the rest, recreation, leisure category. So when you kind of classify it that way, again, I think it's pretty clear that what we're talking about is a Bible topic. God has things to say about it, and if our hearts are inclined to doing His will, we would be interested in knowing what God says about that. So, this dichotomy that I've created, All human life can be broken down into work or rest. Every minute of your day is either work or rest. Some basic foundational principles revealed in Scripture. Number one, God works. Number two, God rests. Already been quoted. We'll look at a few other scriptures here in a minute. God created people to work. I put that third. I didn't put number 4 third. God also created people to need rest. But which one do you think comes first from the weight, from the balance of Scripture? Do you think God created people to work? Do you think God created people to rest? I hear a work. He's not very confident because he said it very softly. Work? Yeah? Yes. Could time you spend resting be doing the best with your time? Yes. God made us such that we must rest. We can't work for very long without resting. In the whole scheme of things, we live, 70, 80 plus years. We've got someone 102, 5. Time has gotten away from me. He's 105. He'll be 105. Sister Kathleen is a 101 right now, like today, tomorrow, yesterday. Okay. So in all that, how long can you work without rest? You can't go 100 years. You can barely go a couple days, right? We can hardly go hours working continually. You got to stop and eat or drink or go to the bathroom or something, right? But still, the question is, which is predominant? I haven't heard anybody say, no, I think God made us to rest. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yep. Taking of the Scripture, how many criticisms, condemnations, rebukes are there for people working too much? Just period, working too much. Now, there are some criticisms of people working for selfish motivations, working thinking only about themselves, working and storing up and clutching and grasping and greedy, right, and not sharing, working and not being thankful to God for the bounty, working and not giving to God. There are some rebukes of that, but are those rebukes about the working? No, I don't think so. Okay, it is ironic to me. Do I want to say this now? I want to say it now. It's on my mind. Okay. What do we call somebody in our society, in our civilization, who works too much? What? What? Workaholic. We have it. We know it. Okay? What do we think of workaholics? They work too much. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's addiction. What else do we think about it? All fun, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. What else do we think about workaholics? Okay, so they're not fun, they're not interesting, they don't relax, they're stiff and hard to be around, or they are so focused, so obsessed on this particular aspect of work that they are out of balance and they neglect other important things that are also necessary and warrant their time and energy and attention, right? Okay? But that workaholic is an abuse that does not come from working too hard, exerting too much, right? It comes from being absorbed with it, consumed with it, and to the neglect of other things. I just think it's interesting that the tilt over the last, I would imagine, several decades has gone from where workaholic, I don't know how many decades it would have been ago that workaholic was not viewed much of as a problem. Workaholic was admired. A good work ethic, someone who did work an extra job, someone who provided and shared, provided for their family, was elevated, right? And I think things have changed over the decades to where now people who are, and I hope I'm not jumping the gun here, but people who the Scripture would say, you are resting too much. You are embracing rest to an extreme. But what does our society do with that lifestyle? Glamorizes it, idolizes it, puts it up on a pedestal, and that's the life, right? And workaholics, I mean, nobody wants to be a workaholic, or so we say. Nobody wants to be around a workaholic. Workaholics are bad, right? I just think it's interesting how that tipped. Let's talk a little more. The historian geek in me can't help but go here. How long has human history been going on? Give me a ballpark number. Yes. Well, a few days after that anyway. Yeah. Let's say 10,000. It might be 8, it might be 6. I don't know. The Bible doesn't say, but let's say it's several thousand years, okay? For how long in human history has it been that we take a new human and from birth to 18, maybe 22, 24 years old, they are not expected to work and provide for themselves or provide for the family, but they're allowed to learn, to study, to play sports, play games, live at home, not contribute economically. How long out of 10,000 years has that been going on? No, wrong answer. 200 years? Less than 200 years. Read stories about the colonial period, our revolutionary fathers and all that. I mean, it was the wealthy people who could afford to go and school beyond early teens. Now, why is that? Had to work. I mean, we're at a point in civilization now, in America, third world, we got third world problems, where, 2% of the population is involved in producing the food that the whole country needs, and we export food? Go back 200 years, it was flip-flopped. 90-something% of the people had to be involved in some way in producing the food to live. So what did kids do from 4, 6, 8, 10 years old? They're out in the fields working, gathering the eggs and slopping the hogs and all that kind of stuff, right? So it is a very modern development in third world industrialized countries that we can afford to let children not just play for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, but for maybe the most of first 2 decades of their lives devoted to learning, maybe some people call it finding themselves, figuring out what you want to do with your life, figuring out what kind of higher level economic activity you want to be engaged in. Okay? Question number 2. For how many of these 6, 8, 10,000 years has it been true that you can work until you're maybe 60, 65, 70, and then you can do this thing called retire? You stop going to work and earning a paycheck, but you still get to live comfortably. And it's considered okay. It's considered, acceptable. You're still a good citizen. It's even, wow, good for you. Congratulations. Let's throw a party for you. How long has that been going on? Less than 100 years. You remember FDR, Security, 1935. Okay? When he, I'm giving him credit, he's the president. Congress also, enacted it. But when that happened, retirement age, full retirement age was, anybody know? 65. There was no 62 then. Originally, it was 65 you could turn on your benefits. Guess what the average life expectancy for Americans back in the 30s was? 59. Okay? So retirement was not a thing more than 100 years ago. Except for who? The very well off, the independently wealthy, aristocrats, people who passed down wealth, or maybe they were self-made men, the Rockefellers and the people like that. Question number 3. What do we consider in America to be a full-time job? 40 hours a week. 40 hours a week. In fact, most jobs, this is not always the case, but in most jobs, if you work more than 40 hours a week, what are you legally entitled to? Overtime. Okay? When did that start? Out of the 10,000 years of human existence, for how long has 40 hours been full-time work? Less than 100 years. What was it before that? Sun up, sun down. 6 days a week, maybe 7. Okay. Now, Steve, Sink, come on, stop it now. You've been 7 minutes on a history lesson. What's that for? Why does that matter? Why is that relevant to our conversation? Yes, Rex. Ditto. True. True. Here is a reality we cannot escape. We live in the time and place that we live. That's tautological, isn't it? That's self-evident. We live in the time and place that we live, which means we don't live in the time and place that we don't live. And so it is easy for us to lose sight, to lose perspective on the reality, the truth that God does not get immersed into. He does not get enveloped into. He's not caught in a zeitgeist like we are, where this is our world and this is the only thing we can picture, 40-hour work weeks. You get to go to college till 22. You get to retire at 62, 65, 67. We work 40 hours. That's not human reality for 1,000 years. But it's easy for us to think this is normal. This is, of course, the way human life is. Now, let me hasten to say, I'm not suggesting that you can't be a faithful Christian and serve God in 21st century America, where the picture of life is, I'm going to go to school for 18, 22 years, then I'm going to work pretty hard for 30, 40 years, and then I'm going to enjoy retirement period. I'm not saying that's wrong or bad. What I am saying is, think that's the standard of human existence is factually mistaken. And it is dangerous because it makes us vulnerable to having a skewed view of the proportion of the two breakup of life, work and rest. And we get to feeling that, 50% of my life ought to be rest. First 20 years, last 30 years, 2 or 3 days out of the week between then, 6 or 4 hours every day during the work week, right? And I think it's fair to say that has not been the case until the last 100 to 200 years for most people. Anybody want to comment on that, react to that, push back, add any other observations? Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So great question, and couched in there was some good points. A lot to respond to there. My mind is racing in several different directions. Here's one of the questions I had, a thought question to provoke you guys. Anything to be made by the cycles, the intervals regarding work, sleep, rest that God has revealed in His Word? I'm thinking about creation, and I'm thinking about the old law standard. Now, I'm not saying we're bound to the old law and we got to follow this because it's, ordained or something. I am asking this question. Is not nature the 7-day week that God created? Do I need to nail down that God created a 7-day week? Or is that pretty well established? His creation cycle was in 7 days. He created for 6 days and then He rested. From that point on, society has been organized around a 7-day week. Okay, it's pretty well settled. Number 2, you got the day and night. Okay, the laws of the Old Testament didn't just suggest that they rested on the 7th day. It was not a suggestion. Hey guys, take it easy, man. You're working too hard. It was a commandment. It was expressly given to force people to stop working and rest, and to let everybody else rest. Like even the workaholics. You got to rest, and you got to let your servants rest. You got to let your animals rest. Everybody's got to rest. Now, from the whole body of the law of Moses and the historical commentary we get about society under the law of Moses, it was not just people lounging, resting idly, and just restoring their body, was it? What else was it supposed to include? The Sabbath rest was also to do what else? For people. Not for animals, I don't think, but for people. You remember the creation account. You remember what else specifically? Deliverance from the Exodus. That's what they were told to do, to remember that. Okay? What else do you have to do in an agrarian society where there's crops out there need to be watered and tended to, and harvest time's coming in? You got to get the crops or you might lose a lot of it. So what do you learn by forcibly sitting down when the crops are ready out in the field? Dependence on God. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. So there was a lot of spiritual things that were also taught here. But fundamentally, it was mandatory rest. Suggesting what? If it wasn't created, what would happen? A lot of people would keep working. In fact, there were violations of that. One guy got stoned to death for picking up sticks on the Sabbath. They let the Sabbath year and the Jubilee year, they let that go for centuries where they just ignored that, right? Another point I think you might be teasing out there is, in a society where our existence, I mean, we can go for a week vacation at a time, and what happens? Do you come home and everything's falling apart? Oh, okay. The Jack's trainer's on his head. Yeah, everything's falling apart. We wouldn't go on vacation for a week if everything fell apart when we came back. Okay, how many one-week vacations do you think there were in the 1700s? Not too many. Okay, my point is, rest and leisure and recreation is such a plentiful, available activity in our society that we, as I think Brian's suggesting, Chris, I did it publicly. Chris Baker is suggesting is it's easier to have a disconnect between dependence on God, I'm not working today. How many of you, the last time you had a day off, 2 days off, a vacation off, you're reminded of, please God, keep providing for me, because I'm not working and I don't know where the food's going to come from. I don't know if I'll still have a roof over my head. I don't know if, all the work will get done around the place, right? We don't think that, do we? Not because of the rest. So thank you for the question. Anyone else want to comment? Not only do we get paid, it has gotten to the point where we totally expect it. We demand it. We would be affronted. We would be aggrieved. We would be mealy mouthed, down in the mouth, pouting, disgruntled employees. If someone said, if Ebenezer Scrooge said, I suppose you want Christmas off and you want to get paid for it. Remember that? He was Scrooge. I mean, can you imagine today if an employer said, yeah, you can have a week off? Sure. I mean, you're not working, so I'm not going to pay you. I mean, what would you do? You're like, what? No, we wouldn't stand for that. We would not stand for that. They would not have employees because they'd go to the places that pay, So that's how much life has changed. That's the first point I'm trying to make here, is how different our life is compared to the existence of about 94.7% of who've lived throughout history. I'm just making up that number, but it's got to be close to that. Okay? There's a few billion people on the planet right now that their existence is still like 1450. In Africa, all over Asia. They just survive. You're eking out an existence day by day. Okay. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Keith had his hand up. I keep not seeing you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes. So, God gave work and rest for people to enjoy. I think that is a clear point in Scripture. is that work is not just given as a duty, as an obligation, and the whip is having to be lashed and work, 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 shoulder to the wheel, nose to the grindstone. God made us, He built us, He designed us to work. And we only are at our best when we are doing some kind of worthwhile effort, some kind of labor that is productive and useful. Rest is the same way. It is a good thing. It is legitimate in and of itself. And God intends for us not just to rest because we have to, but to enjoy the rest. I'll skip to the passage where whoever that writer is builds a case interweaving the creation cycle. God worked 6 days and then He rested. And then Joshua leading the people into the land, which was supposed to be rest. And he makes the point that if Joshua had given them true rest, then that would have been the end of the story, right? But that was never the case. And the conclusion is, if Joshua had given them rest, he would not have spoken of another day after going into the land. Consequently, there remains a Sabbath rest for the people of God. Not the Sabbath day, not going into the land of Canaan, but there is off in the distance, in the future, a true, real, permanent Sabbath rest for the people of God. For the one who has entered his rest has himself also rested from his works, as God did from his. Therefore, let's make every effort to enter the rest. Rest, God's design for rest, in His proportion, in His measure, is a good thing. It's legitimate. It's valid. It's not to be, ashamed of. Okay? So, I think we've covered some good basics. We've refreshed our memory. We put things in perspective. Work and rest. Subsets of rest would be leisure, recreation, hobbies, exercise, play, games, sports. I mean, we could put a lot of little specific things that fall in that category, right? So I think it would boil down to this for a Christian who wants to have a godly view, who wants to have a God-approved life, that we're spending our time, our precious time, our limited time. We're using it, as Benny referenced, for the best purpose, right? What are some questions? I think it boils down to this. How much is enough? I will vouch for this, for myself. I do not really have to worry much about that one. There was a brief period in my professional career where I did. My wife can testify for it. If I ever get the sloth card played on me, the lazy card played on me, I can just call for my wife and say, hey, tell them about 2001 through 2012, okay? But for the most part, I don't really have to have anybody telling me, now, Steve, you need to rest. You're working too hard. How much is enough? How much is too much? That's more where I am. How much is too much? And then what shape or what form does the rest take? Are there any other questions you would put there that if you boiled it down to a Christian thinking about his or her rest and leisure, recreation, and how much time you spend and how you spend it, does it come down to that? Is there anything else you would add to that short list of questions? So, Bible teachings that apply to rest, that are applicable, that are relevant to rest. So, about these parables, we're not going to read the parables. We don't have time to go into the details. I just want to jog your memory with these. Does Jesus' teaching in these cases have any bearing on us and leisure and recreation? So you remember the laborers in the vineyard? What were the people who were found in the 11th hour told? What were they asked? Why have you been standing here idle all day long? What is the presumption? You should have been working. You were not working. You were resting. And of course, they had an answer, which was, we've been around, nobody's hired us. We've been trying to get a job. Maybe that was an acceptable answer, I'm not sure. What about the two sons? I'm talking about the two sons, both of whom were told, go into my vineyard and work. One of them said no and repented and went. What did the other son do? I'll go, sure. He didn't. What did he not do? What else was he doing? We don't know, but it wasn't work. It was rest. It was sleeping. It was recreating. I don't know. But he didn't do what he was supposed to do. What about the rich fool? This, I think, can be really twisted to teach some things that just I don't believe are true. I don't think that people in heaven and hell are going to be there as some kind of cosmic the scales. Like if you have a pleasant, good life, you're going to hell. And if you had a miserable, wretched existence, you get to go to heaven. And that you can maybe come to that conclusion by just taking what the words are given to Abraham here. There was a rich man, and he habitually dressed in purple and fine linen, enjoying himself in splendor every day. And Abraham said to him, child, remember that during your life you received your good things, and likewise Lazarus bad things, but now he's being comforted and you're being in agony. What do you suppose was also true about the rich man who was dressed in purple and had fine things and had plenty of food and ate the nicest food and big house? What else do you think was also true? He had leisure, but what else was also true? Was he helping the poor people who were crawling up to his house and trying to get a scrap of food? Apparently not. Apparently not. Was he giving thanks to God? Was he devoting his life, living life for God? Apparently not. He was just taking in, enjoying the life. One thing I'm convinced is true. I am not here on this earth to enjoy my life. I'm not here to have a pleasant life. That is not the definition. That is not the standard. Is I want to have an enjoyable, pleasant life. I want to have a good life. If good is defined as, did I have a good time? Was my experience pleasant? That's not why we're here. How about the rich fool? His soul was going to be required of him. It was not just because he was wealthy. Hey, you're wealthy, you're going to hell. That's not the message. What was the problem with the rich fool? Multiple problems. One of them is you were not rich toward God. You don't even think about God. But another problem was that he didn't view his produce, his accumulation of wealth, as an opportunity to serve God, serve other people. He used it as an opportunity to just reach for as much, what? Leisure. What does he say? Take, store up goods for many years to come. Relax, eat, drink, and enjoy yourself. Not good. Prodigal son. Rex, I'm going to call on you here, where he squandered his estate in riotous living, foolish living, New American Standard. Others say wild, wasteful. Is that necessarily immoral? Is it necessarily immoral? Could it have just been leisure, recreation, relaxing? Did he have to be fornicating? Did he have to be, thieving and gambling and getting drunk? Not necessarily. He could have just been taking it easy. What's that? I'm not saying he wasn't doing those other things. But could it be that too much rest was part of the problem? Okay. This definitely needs to be one of this type of principle. There's lots of other ways it's expressed in Scripture, but this definitely needs to be one of our principles that we use as a standard for our leisure, recreation, fun, play, right? It needs to be true, honorable, right, pure, lovely, wholesome. Do we agree on that? It should not be anything that is immoral, anything that hurts our influence, anything that we wouldn't be fine, pleased, have Jesus participating with us. You know, I would take Jesus to an Alabama game, I think. No? Oh, an Auburn game. I'm sorry, Pam. I'm looking at Pam saying an Alabama game. Again, if you couldn't, you probably ought to reconsider whether you're doing it or not. Could you take Jesus hunting? Sure. There's nothing immoral about that. Okay, so that's one of the standards that you wouldn't miss that 12-point buck if you had him with you. But that's definitely one of the standards. Another standard, and this is where I think most of us probably are. This is definitely where I am. The biggest issue that I think I need to consider and evaluate with how I spend my discretionary time is this topic right here. Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. It is human nature, folks. We cannot escape this. We cannot change it. If we put our treasure in something, our heart follows. It cannot help but follow. Now, treasure is not just money. Treasure. Your time. Anything of value. Your time, your interest, your attention, your enthusiasm. What else? Anything you invest. Okay? Family. Okay? If you pour yourself into it in any form, your heart is going to follow. Now, guess what happens when you spend more time, more money, more enthusiasm? What happens when I watch the Pittsburgh Steelers every week during football season, guess what? I think more about the Steelers. I look forward to the Steelers. I'm more disappointed after the Steelers lose. They go 11-0, and then what was that? Snapping the ball over his head into the end zone? I mean, my heart goes that way, right? It cannot be helped. So that is probably, I'm speaking for myself, I'm guessing for some of the rest of us, is the biggest rub. Is we've got all this discretionary time because we are blessed to live in an age, this little tiny speck of history over a 10,000-year run, and we have been born in the time where we can choose what we do for a living. We can go out and get educated. We can change from this job to that job. We can make a living that supports our family in roughly 40, 50, 60 hours a week. We get paid 2 to 3 to 4 plus weeks a year to not work. Now, what are you going to do with all that extra time? Know this. How you spend the time, your heart is following you. And we will be held accountable because what we are announcing to God, what we are telling Jesus, this is what's important to me. I'm investing my treasure in it. And we know about momentum, right? We know about the more you do it, the more you want to do it. The more you do it, the more you want to do it, the more you keep doing it, and the harder it is. No, I don't want to watch TV. I don't want to do this again. I don't want to do more of this. I want to be in Scripture. I want to go, help someone, help my neighbor. Is that first or second? Second bell. Okay. Thank you for your very active participation. I hope this is helpful and thought-provoking, and we can all spend some time considering this and making changes if we need to. Next time, remember, Matthew will have security and comfort, and not that I'm aware of, has any questions been sent out, but you can be giving some thought to that until you have some questions there. Thank you.